Point Pleasant Park is an urbanized forest located in the south end of Halifax, Nova Scotia. The park is commonly visited by locals and tourists as it has 39 kilometers of walking and biking trails that run along the coast of the Atlantic Ocean. The park has great significance to the Mi'kmaq Nation as it was a gathering site for spirits known as Amnutukati in the 1600s. At the first full moon, the Mi'kmaq Nation would gather for 7 days in the spring. Thus, it was fiercely protected when the British settlers arrived and stole the land. In 2003, the Category 2 Hurricane Juan made landfall and devastated the city and the rest of the province. The hurricane caused extensive damage to Point Pleasant Park, causing the park to be closed for 9 months. 85% of the tree population was lost, accounting for 70,000 trees, as well as extensive ground floor loss. Prior to the hurricane, Point Pleasant was a mixed Acadian forest with dominant tree species of red spruce and white pine. Following the devastation of the hurricane, many of the dead trees were removed. The young trees were preserved, however, some of the fallen trees were kept to decompose and increase soil nutrients. Ecological succession is the study of community changes following a disturbance. The purpose of this study is to monitor the current succession of the current dominant species, the red spruce and the red maple, as well as the soil chemistry and ground cover flora. By monitoring the succession in Point Pleasant, it allows us to better understand the mechanisms and processes of succession in Acadian mixed forests. It is predicted that as the dominant tree species grow, we will see less ground cover as a result of increased competition for soil resources and sunlight.
For this study, data was collected at Point Pleasant Park, Halifax, Nova Scotia. Studying this area presents an opportunity to assess effects of disturbance in a well-protected forested area, as well as physical and biological changes over time in the community. Linear regression was used to help assess relationship between variables, change in ecological metrics over time, rate of change, and make predictions about the population as it reaches its climax. Data collection was repeated where necessary for data accuracy. For procedure, participants were distributed in groups for data collection, and the 3 types of data collected were trees, ground flora, and soil chemistry. Tools such as soil testing kits and quadrats were used. For trees, all trees at a breast height diameter greater than or equal to 2.5 centimeters were observed. For ground flora, 12 haphazardly placed 1 meter square quadrats were used for sampling. Species and estimate percent cover were estimated by group consensus. Finally, to test for soil chemistry, soil samples were taken from 2 locations and tested for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and soil pH. A 10-minute time period was then set to allow for test development while moving to the next location.
As seen in Figure 1, there's a steady increase in total density in the plant populations at Point Pleasant Park as noted by the line of best fit. 2016 onwards, the residuals increase on either side of the line of best fit, and towards 2021 there are more residuals below the line of best fit. As seen in Figure 1, the total density of plant life in Point Pleasant Park has been steadily increasing since 2006. In 2003, as a result of Hurricane Juan, Point Pleasant Park lost 85% of its tree population, thus natural conservation efforts were implemented to restore the plant life in the park. However, there was not much soil disturbance caused by the hurricane or the cleanup efforts, which allowed the regrowth of dominant tree species, as well as native flora. Throughout the years, the increased access to sunlight provided by the loss of tree canopy allowed the flourishing of many plant species. As a result, the tree canopy alone has increased by 40-fold between the years of 2003 and 2015. However, as the tree canopy continues to increase, we will expect to see more competition between the trees for access to sunlight and soil nutrients, and an overall decrease in the abundance of ground flora, which explains the increase in residuals around 2016 as seen in Figure 1. We should expect to see a decrease in ground flora as there will be less access to sunlight as the tree population in Point Pleasant Park reaches its carrying capacity. Thus, in terms of total density graph, we would expect the line to flatten out slowly and eventually decline.
As seen in Figure 4, Over time, the trend has shown an overall increase in the Shannon Diversity Index, as noted by the line of best fit, indicating a more diverse and ecologically stable community post-Hurricane Juan in 2003. We also see slight fluctuations in the Shannon Diversity Index values around 2006 to 2009, and again around 2017, which is due to subsequent hurricanes not recorded in this study. Overall, the graph shows quick recovery of the population after ecological disturbances over time. The overall increase may be attributed to human interference, such as urban park management and restorative efforts to recover lost populations. Moving forward, we expect to see further increase in the Shannon Diversity Index values and overall species diversity as the forest moves towards its climax community. We also expect that successional changes will lead to an increase in Shannon Diversity Index, as the community will tend to support more species at later stages, which will result in an overall increase in the diversity in species and an ecologically stable population. In conclusion, based on the trends showed in the data provided in previous slides, we can say that the Acadian forest in Point Pleasant Park is in its secondary stage of succession due to the trends seen in the previous graph showing consistent increase in tree density and overall species diversity in the populations post-disturbance of Hurricane Juan. Point Pleasant Park being an urban park can affect succession due to the heavy human interference that comes with the urbanization of any given environment, and this could be through human-induced restoration practices and species migration. Post-disturbance, as older populations become rare in a particular environment, and the environment becomes suitable to support new populations. Depending on the volume of new populations forming within that environment, there will be a change in the direction of ecological succession. Luamptumump, other known as two-eyed seeing, was first coined in 2004 by Mi'kmaq elder Dr. Albert Marshall. This term aims to utilize Indigenous as well as Western knowledge simultaneously in the practice of science. Utilizing two-eyed seeing as an approach in the recovery of Point Pleasant Park allows us to utilize valuable information about the land given to us by the Indigenous peoples, and combined with already widely practiced restoration methods, allows for a stronger informational base and approach in the recovery of Point Pleasant Park to a mature Acadian forest.